everybody, welcome to the dungeon. My name is Robin and today is Lampworking 101.92. Sometimes, all the time, I often get really frustrated working with fine stringers. Anytime I work with them, they just crack right in between my fingers. I have a really hard grasp on things because I'm really shaky, and the lighter I grasp something, the more shaky I seem to get. So I tend to be a little bit more hard, when it comes to grabbing things and applying them. So I came up with the Quintain Cane, and it's a very simple 5 lines inside of clear pulled out into a cane, and it just works great for applying fine lines without having to apply a fine stringer. And it's great because you can put as many lines in this cane as you want, and it works beautifully. Without further ado, let's get into this Quintain Cane. And I hope you're all doing safe and well out there as always. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time in the dungeon. All right, we're going to start this cane out with clear, and I like to use the Mermaid or Effetri Super Clear. It's great. I love it. It just stays beautiful the whole time you're working with it. But what I'm going to do here is just gather up a small amount of glass, and I want to punty this up onto a metal rod. You can use a glass rod if you like. I just prefer a metal rod because I feel like it's more stable. It's not going to crack below the area of the glass. Nothing's going to fall off. So I like to use the metal punty. And once I have a little hot, I'm going to flatten it out with my mini mashers. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time just lengthening it slightly. I don't want it to be square, but I do want it to be a little longer than it is wide. And the next thing I'm going to do is I have my intense black rod, and it comes in a stringer's width, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my 5 lines right onto the face of the clear. You can make however many lines you want to on this. I wanted 5, so I had to kind of fit in that last line on the edge a little bit, and it worked out fine. So once I have all these lines on here, I just want to flatten them out just a little bit, not too much. You can melt them all the way in if you'd like, but what I want to do is get some clear glass in between all and on all of these lines. I am trying really hard not to get any bubbles in here, so I'm just pushing from one end to another with really hot glass, just trapping all of those lines inside, just making a little glass sandwich. And I'll get the edges as well. And what I want to do here is start to build up this cane on both sides with a lot of clear. So I'll go ahead and add more clear just by swiping it on from the top all the way to the bottom. And I'll turn it over and do the same thing. And once I have a kind of an even amount on both sides, I will continue to add more glass, but it can get lengthy when you're just adding it in stripes. So I decided to just get a big wad of glass hot and drop it on one side and kind of push and swirl it on. And right here, just kind of swirl it on. And then I'll add a little bit where I need it on the edges here and there. And I'll do that to both sides. I want to get a really nice even amount of clear on both sides of the lines. And once I have everything nice and encased and the size that I want, you can make this any size you want. It can be much smaller if you're just doing one line, like an encased stringer. You're not going to use as much clear. So I want to heat up one end and I'll punty it up. And then this other end, I'll take my original punty off because I want to pull all of these lines together to the very top, so they all pull out nice and evenly. So I'll just take my tweezers here and just kind of pull a little bit of both sides into the middle. And then I'll go ahead and just cast that off. And that allows all of the lines to go from one end to the other of this cane. I did try to kind of round it out a little bit, but I realized that rounding it out is not like the best thing for me to be doing here. I really, if anything, I needed to start flattening it out, but I added my other puntee and, you know, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I should be probably flattening this out a bit. So I went ahead and flattened it out after I had punteed both sides up. You can flatten it out a little bit and then add your puntee. It might be a little easier. But here, all I'm doing is just heating it up, making sure the whole thing is hot and it's starting to stretch a little bit. And that's fine. I just went ahead and kind of, you know, you just go with the flow. And I'm gonna pull this out. And as I flattened it a little bit here and there, some of the edge stripes kind of got a little hard to see. Either way, it's going to work out great. You can see all the lines here. I'm pulling it out nice and thin, but not too thin. There is a point where it's so thin that you can just barely see the lines. So I wanted to make sure that I only pulled it out so much. And now we have our ready to use Quintain Cane, and I will show you. You can see all those lines here. They look great. And again, you can put as many lines in here as you like. All right, let's go ahead and use this cane. Ooh, I'm going to use this 1/4 inch Mermaid Teal Crinkle strip of Dichroic, and I can't wait to use it. I just got it in, and I thought it would be nice to work with a base that would kind of change the Dichroic on top of it. So I decided I would use a Bubblegum Pink, and this is my base for the bead. And I want it kind of long, so I'm just going to add little wraps right next to each other until I get the length I'm looking for. And the first thing I always do is just roll it out and make sure it's the length that I want and that my edges look nice. And now I'm going to add a whole another bit of pink on there. This time I'm just going to wrap it on, one big wrap. I don't want to add too much or the whole bead will be humongous because there's a much more that we have to put on here. So try to keep your base bead on the smaller side. Okay, just a little bit of heating and we will be ready to apply our Dichroic. But first I just want to even it out so it makes the Dichroic strip easier to apply. All right, that looks good. So we're going to apply the Dichroic strip, and when I do this, I always heat up the clear side of the Dichroic first. You never want to heat up the back side where the Dichroic is actually applied to the clear, or you'll burn it off. So I'm always heating up just the clear side and gently wrapping it around the bead. And to wrap this all the way around your bead, it can take several minutes. And once I have that on there, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time very gently marvering it out. I don't want to overheat it at this point because what happens when you heat up a Dichroic or the Dichroic strip is when it's in the heat, the edges will start to kind of flip up, and that's I don't want that to happen. So what I'm doing here is spending a lot of time just very gently pressing it down, and pressing it down to get everything to flatten out and lay down really nice to where I don't have any more creases. Everything is nice and smooth, but you do want to take your time melting things down when you're working with Dichro. And here it is. The Dichro looks amazing. I just couldn't believe how beautiful it looked. The interesting thing is that on the Bubblegum Pink, it doesn't look teal at all. Okay, so now we are ready to add our Quintain Cane, and I'm just going to start from the very top and just, see what it can do for me. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wiggle here and there, just kind of move it. I just don't want it straight all the way around. I just want to give it a little bit of motion. You can cross over your stringer if you'd like. You can, it's a very calligraphic type of line here. So you can add swirls. There's so many different ways that you can apply this cane that you can get so many different looks out of it. I just wanted to start out real simple here and just apply it evenly so we can just kind of, get an idea of what it's going to look like. The cane is a little thick, so I do take my time adding it and kind of moving that cane around. I think I end up adding about 6 stripes of this Quintain Cane. I thought about doing some loop-de-loops with it, but it was kind of like, I thought about that as soon as I was done. But like always, anytime you're playing with cane or color, there's just a million different ways that you can play with it. Okay, so now that I have the cane applied, I want to kind of pull those edges in just a little bit. So I have my tungsten pick, and I'm just going to heat the very bottom bits of the cane and pull them in towards the mandrel. It'll just finish the top and the bottom of the design much better than just having them floating there. Okay, so now we're going to spend quite a bit of time as well heating all of this up and just pressing it down and smoothing it out to the bead underneath. I think this cane would look beautiful if you did it in shades of green and used it as a background for maybe an underwater scene. It would be perfect for seaweed or something like that. Okay, so everything is pretty much melted in. I always want to make sure before I go to every step that my edges look nice. Now on top of this, oh, it looks so nice. Okay, so on top of this, we're gonna do some little dots here, just with the intense black. And I have to say that I really ended up not liking these dots. I was bummed out that I put them on, but I kind of figured, well, I'll fix it later on. And so I did, but we'll get to that in a second. I just want to press all of those dots in. And then once I have all that melted in, I will go ahead and encase the whole bead in clear. Now, when I first started to apply this, I immediately pushed some of those dots with my clear and smeared them on the bead. So that really bummed me out as well. And I have to think about how am I going to fix that and cover it up. And anytime you're fixing things and covering it up, you're just coming up with more interesting ways of making what you're doing look good for you. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this look good for me. So once I have all my clear on there, I'm going to spend time heating it up and melting it in. And we're almost done with this. I've decided that on top of all of those little tiny dots, I would add some stringer dots to cover them up. So really it ends up, I kind of decided that those black dots were going to be drop shadows. And that's how I got out of not, not liking what I laid down. So I'm just gonna put this little tiny stringer of Triton from Double Helix on top of all those dots, and then I'll add a few more just because. I really like the way this came out too. It looks so good. So I'm just gonna finish speckling this with these little tiny dots and melt them in. I only wanna melt them in halfway because I wanna leave kind of a texture here. But before we're done, I definitely want to reduce the Triton. And so I'm going to take my flame into a reducing flame and give it a couple flashes in that. And the reduction came out so beautifully. However, you don't see it in the final shot. I don't know why, but either way, you can kind of see it here. And we are done. So on that note, you guys, I hope you enjoy this fun dichroic Quintain Cane bead. And on that note, we'll see you next time in the dungeon.